Dave, we're at the corral now. Can you tell us how they use this corral and what they use it for?
Yeah, one thing that was set up here and a lot of thought put into is having multiple pastures, and these are the pastures where we just came from with the water, feed into one central location. And into this particular setup, there's 3 different pastures, about 70 acres each, that feed into this facility. So with that, you can work those different groups of cows. You can use it for multiple reasons. And let's say number 1 reason would be to calve. You know, of course, there's cows that always need calving assistance. This is spring calving cows over here, so you would be calving in a few in January, many in February and March when the weather's not the most ideal out. So you'll want to have a place where you can bring them into. So first of all, when you think of the calving development, this would be where you would tend to bring those cows in to process calves, not only to help with the calving, but let's say you want to tag, vaccinate, catch some weights and some of those things. You can bring it into this location. If you had a cow who said, you know, that may have some difficulty, or maybe it doesn't, you know, attach to that calf right away, you of course have a facility here that you can take them into. It has 3 different pens. Actually, the last pen down there has a gate on it where you can put that cow behind, get that calf to nurse. So this is a little closer attention in here. Maybe leave them in there for a day or maybe 2 days. So that's number 1 thing, is get them in here, solve any calving problems you might have. If you want to process some calves at birth, you can do it in here. Of course, once they're calved and they're mated up and everything, you can kick them back out to the pasture or even move them to another pasture. Then another important thing is sometimes during the summer we want to do some we want to do some calf processing, and that might mean some booster shots or some different things like that. Of course, we can use this for that as well. And then, of course, probably the next thing is this comes around the breeding season. And we talked a lot about their heat watch system that they have, and there is a transponder here in this particular location. So you got to have somewhere to bring those cows in. Once you identify them as being in heat, you can feed all 3 pastures into this location. We got some pens out here that we can use, but anytime you got a corral setting, you have to have different elements of that corral. Usually a corral has some pins off of it, and that's what we have here, is some pins off of that particular location. Down at the end here we have what we call a tub, and that's where we can start crowding them around. And then here we have some runways where we can start, if we're doing cows, let's say in that runway we can put 3 or 4 cows getting into the chute, and that's why we have a longer runway there. This particular area right here is where we would actually go in to AI the cow. This is a cattle working chute. It has different parts to it. It's got its head gate down there, in which, of course, that animal comes in, and you would close those side walls against the neck of that cow. It has these panels on the side where we can open up in case we want to maybe treat the animal, maybe it's feed or do something close with that. And it's got sides that break away. Those different panels break away with that. Down here at the end, we have, this is our AI chute. We can use for pregnancy checking and AI. So you notice that we can open, either of those gates open up, and we can go in. As mentioned, we can do our AI in that particular location. The other thing, if we want a pregnancy check, we can do it, you know, in that location. So really, in one location here, we have a facility that we can use for multiple uses. Calving is one use, processing of those calves as well as cows, AIing the cows, and then of course coming in and pregnancy checking the cows. So I guess when we think about, and we talked this morning about the number of cattle producers in Illinois, how it's decreased. And probably one of the reasons that we've seen that increase is lack of facilities. Just handling cattle is tough work if you don't have facilities to do it. You know, one lariat or a halter and a tree and one post out there to try to slap it around isn't a way to try to handle cattle, because usually you can get injured or the animal can get injured. One thing about this type of facility, you're working calmly with the animal. You got the facility that animal will not get hurt. You can restrain it, and you can do all those things that's required That's might be breeding or calving or health management practices, you know, for the cow herd.
Is it a practice to work these cattle on horse?
Excuse me?
On horse?
Actually, this particular location, they do work them on horse. And they do have a number of horses here. You know, I would say the trend nationwide is probably three-wheelers or four-wheelers. You probably see more of that. But they do use horses here, and I think once the cattle, you know, they're used to horses and they can work them very easily. And that might even be a calmer way of working cattle than, let's say, a bunch of three-wheelers out there, four-wheelers running around.
Right. Now, we said that these were approximately 60, 70 acre pastures. This corral will utilize how many of those pastures?
Well, it'd probably utilize one of them, and I would think that there's probably around 350 cows over here on this spring calving herd, and they're divided into three, you know, groups. So there's probably, you know, around 100 cows per group here in the pastures. So it can handle, you know, one of those to be brought in at a time and process those cows through. I think they even mentioned earlier too that they wean calves out of this particular location. I might mention that this location that we're at is going to, they just introduced a new management practice this year on weaning calves, and that's their fence line weaning calves. I would say the natural thing is either take the calves away from the cows. That's usually what happens mostly. The other thing would maybe to take the cows and take them off in another location. But what they did in this particular site this year with those spring calving cows is just put it was really a woven wire fence down between the cows and the calves, and they were actually exposed to each other during the weaning process. And the gentleman in charge here said that those calves started eating the next day. That probably the calves didn't even know they were weaned as much as even the cows. The cows kind of bellowed for 3 or 4 days. The calves just seemed to go on because they were used to being creep fed. They were in a pasture with plenty of feed. And so they weaned without very little stress at all. There's been a number of research trials conducted on that. And actually the weight gain was much greater on what we call fence line weaning as compared to taking them off somewhere and putting them in a lot. And I think a couple things there. They're in their normal environment. They're used to that kind of the forage and everything. Second of all, it's probably not near as much dust and everything out in that pasture. So it's a management tool, and they try to use as many of the what I'd call technology and management tools here as possible to hopefully make this operation as environmentally and as welfare friendly as possible.
Well, good. We've seen how they handle the cattle and the pastures. Let's go take a look at some cattle.
Okay. Weeks old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yellow tag there is a purebred.
Huh? It's an embryo.
Okay, okay,
And all the others are white.
okay. Purebred would be white as well then, right?
Right, the
Yeah.
calves are right now.
Yeah.
But this orange cow
Okay,
right here,
okay.
43, 46, she's a purebred.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Dave, we're in one of these approved pastures, and we're looking at some cows and some young calves. Just when did they start calving here, do you know?
These calves are about these are our fall calving cows. They started about 2 weeks ago, or just shortly after the first week of September. And there's about 150 cows out here that were calved, cows and heifers. I might mention, as we look at these, you notice, of course, one ID method is their ear tags. And all the calves have ear tags, and they're numbered numerically as they calve. How the operation does here is they all would have a 4-digit number. The first number would be 8,000. and they start with their spring calves, and they usually run up to about 1 to 350 or so. And then I think they started these with 8,400 and went up from there. The other thing too to notice here is there's a cow, well, the calf that you're pointing to down there, the little calf has a yellow tag in its ear. And that particular calf is an ET calf, an embryo transfer. They flush their very best cows here, and they put it into what we can call the surrogate mother, and that's probably that cow standing right in front of her there. It's facing us with her head, and the little calf there, that's probably its dam. It's a surrogate mother, and that of course would be a purebred ET calf. The white, all the rest of them are white tagged. There will be some commercial calves in here, and there will also be some purebred calves. There's a few cows out here that have orange tags in it. You might have caught the one cow earlier, and that's a purebred cow. So they code all their cows ear tag according to whether it's a commercial cow, whether it's a purebred cow, and then as a calf, it's assigned a number as it's calved, and the color coding tells if it's a embryo, ET calf or not.
You said they flush. You want to just briefly describe how they flush a cow?
Okay, actually what they do is, first of all, you have to identify your very best cows you have, and they do that on its genetic merit. And then what they do is take it to a firm that actually does most of that. They give their preliminary shots here, and what you do is give shots to what we call super-ovulate that cow. And instead of dropping 1 or in a few situations 2 eggs, it might drop on the average 6 or 7 eggs, all the way up to maybe a dozen or 15 eggs. And what that person does, he's an embryologist, he goes in, and I should know about day 11, I think it is, and will actually go into the reproductive tract of that cow and flush those eggs out of the reproductive tract. I think it's really in the fallopian tubes or where they are at that point, and catch them in a petri dish. They will actually examine those eggs under a microscope. They will grade those eggs into, I think, 3 different groups as far as quality. They have the option of implanting those eggs at that time, or what most people do anymore is actually freeze those embryos so that they can implant them at another time. If they wish to do it without freezing, then they have to synchronize the recipient females. If they freeze the eggs, then they need to go in and set up your cow herd, meaning synchronize those so they can all be implanted on a certain day. So
now, is that egg fertilized at the time they harvest it?
Yeah, yes it is. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
It would be, I think, it's so many cell, and I think it's day 11 or something of that nature.
Yeah. Now, when do they start keeping records on these calves?
Well, the records really go back to when the pregnancy made, and that goes back to, first of all, what they would do is AI all these cows. So at that point, the record starts what it's made it to, what day it's made it to, because after you AI for a certain length of time, then you turn bulls in. And usually what they do is leave a space of time when they stop AIing until they turn into bulls naturally, so we know which is the AI calves and which are the natural calves. And then so you got to know which bull they're out of. That's number one. And then the second thing, of course, you start at the time of calving. You keep a calving record, and that would be what cow it is, what number you assigned to that calf, what the calf weighed, its calving ease score. You provide a calving ease score to that cow. So all that's done, at that time. As far as processing those calves, you might give a scour vaccination at that time. You might give some other shots, at that time as well. So it starts back when conception occurs. The next time is really when you pregnancy check those cows to see, how far they're along. Actually, the person who pregnancy checks will tell you how many days they've been pregnant, so that will give you the first lead, whether they're AI calves or whether they're natural calves. And then, of course, it comes to this point here when they hit the ground. We assign a number to them, catch a birth weight, catch a calving ease, and have a list of the cow, the calf number, and what sire it should be out of.
Great. Over the hill there, we see a lake. Is that one of the water sources?
Yes, it is. Actually, what they have on that lake, and in this particular, and these are, like I mentioned, the fall calving cows. The acreage actually goes back here. There's about 300 acres in this particular setup. There's probably 10 or 12 different paddocks back here that they can be rotated through. There is 2 lakes that they have here. Each of them have a powered water source off that. And of course that powered, that well, which is off the lake, pumps water to these pastures. It's set up the same way as the pasture we looked at before. There is, and I think we notice up over the end of those cows there, where they're standing up along the fence, there is a water source up there. There's another one down here in this pasture behind us. So they're all set up with the Mirafonts or similar type watering system that are frost-free type watering system. So as mentioned earlier, you got to have a good source of water. It can get dry, and I know people who have to haul water to the cows or any livestock, it's a tough job. So having lakes build up, and the nice part about it here, we got great vegetation out here. We have superb pasture. You can see in the pasture we have excellent grasses here. We have legumes here as well. This would be our clovers in here. Of course, the rest of it would be our grasses here, so we got great pastures. The nice part about this thing is the lake is down at the bottom of the pasture, so we don't have any erosion. It provides a clean source of water going into that lake as runoff. So having, good pastures, excellent water with a source of shade, hey, it's the best you can do.
It's cattle heaven here, right?
Almost, yes. Well, the other thing too, when we talk about the cows, the quality of the cows, when you think first of all about the condition of the cows, and we actually go in and we can body condition score our cows. It's really a scoring system from 1 to 9, and I'd say if we look at most of these cows, they're probably in the 6 range, 5, strong 5 or 6 range, and that's really great because that cow's going into lactation, carrying some condition. She can go right on through and milk, her colostrum, her initial milk is colostrum, and that's where all the antibodies is, so she'll have a good source of colostrum for that calf. She'll probably milk real well. She'll probably recycle, and that's really important because you got to get her bred, in 80, 90 or 70, 80, 90 days from the time of calving to get her rebred so that she calves once a year. The window of calving here in this particular operation is probably 60 to 75 days. You want them pretty close together, and that's really important because you can process those calves together. You can wean them all together. The cows, when you go into your pregnancy evaluation and your winter feeding program, they're all, all kind of close together. So that's good management, and that's what keeps you in the cattle business.
And the waterways and the ponds are all fenced. Cattle can't get into them, right?
That's right. That's right. Actually, the lakes here, is fenced out. There is some streams that flow through the farm, and they're all fenced out as well. And we want to be environmentally, we want to do things right. And as I mentioned, when you think about soil eroding away, there's nothing better than grass on that. And then, of course, when you think about clean water entering an operation and running out the other end of the operation, that's what you try to have here. And by fencing them out, by really having good waterways, that allows clean water to enter and leave a premise.
Okay. I think we got another stop here to take a look at the bulls and replacement heifers.
That's right, yes.
Okay. I just got a D300 Nikon. I really like that. Does a great job.
I'm ready for you now, anytime.
AI thing, semen comes in, and you can put the bull from wherever. bull that you've ordered, purchased. This is actually a semen cane from the bull that we've got here that we use for AI. And yeah, also does natural service for us.
Got something for him.
The word would be thick.
Mm.
Are you going to have appropriate Western music in the background?
These are calving the spring then, right now. These are the spring heifers. Bull didn't cooperate, but we can't get these any better than that.
I bet if you stand out there and not move, they'll come right up to you and start sniffing you.
You ready to do something? Dave, what do we got here? It looks like we got a group of heifers of some sort here.
Yeah, these are the spring calving heifers. Actually, there's 74 of them here in this group. They will tend to start calving in February and March of this coming year. Again, these are, I'd say, the very top end of the heifers that were calved last year. This is, as I mentioned, 74 out of probably 160 or 70 females. Again, they have passed basically all the different criteria, meaning that they were probably not too heavy at birth. They were probably calved easy. They probably had a good weaning weight and 205-day weight. They probably grew good to 365 days. They also have been all scanned, ultrasonics, as far as the ribeye area, the amount of external fat they have, the amount of marbling. Especially this herd does really put a lot of emphasis on that intermuscular fat or marbling, which really dictates quality grade. These heifers were framed, meaning measured how tall they were, hip height, and that's so that we end up with a bunch of uniform heifers. They also had pelvic measurements taken on them, and that would indicate any really small pelvic heifers that may have difficulty calving. They were all AI'd, and then of course used cleanup bulls, you know, on the females, so they're really select. And then of course, hopefully they're bred to really top AI bulls. You notice there's some yellow tagged females in here. Those would be purebred females. The white tags would be commercial heifers. They're all double ear tagged. If you get up real close and look at their tag, the dam number is on there, as well as the sire number. As a matter of fact, this 7152 kind of standing right in the middle here. You notice she's out of 53, and that would be the herd sire over here. His number is 53, so we have offsprings of his in here, as well as offsprings of other purebred bulls in the herd, and most of them will hopefully be bred, you know, out of AI, bred to AI. And that's what we refer to as stacking pedigrees, stacking genetics, meaning that the bulls they're out of are very select and for growth and performance and milk and carcass. They're bred to a bull that has those same traits, and of course their offsprings will be bred to a similar kind of bull. So the predictability in what you're going to end up with really increases. Might mention the weight of these heifers. They're all in great condition, and that's good. You want them to, at the time of calving, be in what I'd say moderate, you know, plus condition. So again, they're just a great set of females, real uniform in kind, and have the genetics behind them.
So they were born a year ago this past spring.
That's right. They would be born in a few of them probably in January, most of them in February. If you notice, their tags start with 7,000, so that tells you they were born in the year 7,000. Here's a 7,040 walking right up to me. She is the 40th calf born last spring. And there's the 05, that was the fifth calf. 7005 is the fifth calf. So when you go out here and look at these, you know a lot of things about them. You know about when they were born. You know their dam, 5083. You know their sire, 53. So you got a lot of history, you know, by just looking at the tag. And then, of course, all that is tied, if they're purebred, back to the pedigree where we have EPDs on that. We know exactly what those EPDs are. We know what bulls they were mated to complement, you know, any weak links that they might have. There's no perfect animal, there's no perfect creature, you know. So we always have to compensate and complement, you know, the traits in them with a sire that'll add to those traits that they have.
In our discussion this morning or either this afternoon, we never talked anything about cloning. You talked about the perfect animal. Will we ever get the perfect animal with cloning?
I doubt it. With clone, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah, the thing about even with cloning, if we look at genetic improvement in animals, we're always should be, the next generation should probably be on the average superior to the previous generation. And that, if we look at the purebred breeds, they show genetic trends. And all those traits that we look at continually go up because we're always identifying those superior sires and concentrating those genetics. What happens is we got an animal, and it's a good animal, and we clone it. Well, all of a sudden we got a lot of offsprings down the road that are probably superior to that animal. So cloning has merit, but probably not as much merit as just going out and really making the right matings. And that's where we can make genetic improvement, is complementing the weak parts of one animal with another animal.
Do you want to make any comment? We did get a picture of the bull coming up here, but he didn't come all the way up.
Yeah, the bull out here is their senior herd sire. He came from Wyoming. He is a very elite sire as far as his EPDs. He's actually a sire that's kind of a moderate birth weight sire. He's tremendous in weaning weight on his EPDs, and we call it percentile rank, tremendous on yearling weight. He has excellent carcass traits. So they bought him to kind of lead off their natural service, as well as AI. You know, they use him in the herd AI as well. And a couple reasons for that. They want to compare him with these very elite AI sires they're using to see exactly what his genetic merit is. You know, when we catch all those weights and everything, we have our EPDs, but those are somewhat estimates. When we start using that, you know, animal, either a cow that has 1 or 2 calves or a bull that we use in multiple herds, that really increases our accuracy and really gives us predictability. I
see. Refresh us on what EDP is.
Okay, EPD is expected progeny difference. And when we catch weights on an animal, that's that one animal and how it did. But an EPD takes in not only the individual animal's performance, but it takes in his sire, his dam, his half sibs, his full sibs, his maternal grandsire, his paternal grandsire. So it really backs up the expected performance of the animal with his whole pedigree and how all the animals previous to him in his pedigree did in a particular trait. So its strength, its power, its predictability is greatly improved by, you know, having a lot of information coming up with that one number for that particular trait.
Okay, we have a canister over here. Will you want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, yeah. This 2110 here, you notice it's got the tag, and then it has a little yellow button up there in that left ear, and that's the EID tag. That's the electronic ID tag. It's this heifer right along the fence here. She's looking right at the camera. 7110 is her number. and just to the right of her number is a yellow round button tag. And that's her electronic ID tag. What we can do with that is, let's say she would lose her means of identification, and she already is triple or quadruple identified. She has a tag in each ear. She also has a tattoo in each ear. But by running her through the chute, along with a lot of other animals, we have readers that will actually read that tag just as those animals move through there. And it's a 12-digit tag. I think it's a 12-digit tag. It pertains, the first digits is the United States digits. Yes. And then they're numerically to, starting somewhere with 1. And each animal in the beef cattle industry has a unique tag that pertains to that individual animal. And it will allow that animal with an EID tag, wherever it would go, it should be read electronically with that same number. If she went to market, that could be transferred on the rail and followed all the way through the packing industry as well.
So no other animal in the United States would have a number like that?
That's correct, right. Electronic EID. Actually, both of those that are right here now, and this one heifer over here, all 3 of those heifers right up here, that other heifer, all of them, okay, all of them's got EID tags. You notice it's in the left ear, and I think that is the approved location to do that, because if they set up readers, they kind of set them up on the left side, so when they go through, they can read them. So it's again another technology that's used in agriculture, used in beef cattle production.
And that's called individual identification.
That's right, yes.
Okay.
And it moves along with premise. Premise is this particular farm right here, identification. And then we have on that farm individual animal identification. That's the EID, electronic identification number for that animal.
Okay. Would you like to illustrate what a straw looks like?
Yeah. Let me go down here to jump over it so I don't tear down that gate. Super set of heifers.
Dave, this is a canister and a straw. They call that a straw that contains semen that's been collected out of a herd bull here, right?
That's right. Something that has probably impacted the purebred industry as much as anything is AI, artificial insemination. And we don't have to go back that many years. Actually, probably 30, 35 years ago, the use of AI, artificial insemination, was not accepted in the beef cattle purebred industry. And once AI was allowed, it really opened up the genetic improvement of beef cattle, and especially in the purebred industry. This particular straw, as you mentioned, is actually the sire that we saw back here. He's 53 is his number. And he was collected, I think they have a bank here of semen on this bull of 300 plus straws. And with that, it's an insurance policy as well. Once you go out and you buy these genetics and pay big money for them, that bull liable to die, probably get struck by lightning or something might happen to it. So you got to have protection, on that, and collecting semen allows you that protection on that particular bull. Whenever they collect this, they of course process it and dilute it and everything, so they can get multiple multiple straws out of a bull.
Now that's kept in liquid nitrogen?
That's right. Yes, this is actually a canister that's used to transport semen. In a canister like that, you can put several hundred straws in there, maybe even up to 1,000 straws or something. It is kept in liquid nitrogen. That has to be refilled every so often. But that's the way most of our genetics is transported now, from the AI studs to the different herds, and of course they transfer it out of that into their bigger canisters then, and then of course this is what they use to breed the cows. It would have, and I should know, but I can't remember the number, probably a couple million sperm in this, and again what you mainly want is that one sperm to fertilize that egg in that cow. Unless you were super ovulating, then of course you have to fertilize multiple eggs. But this is what makes the thing work right here.
And the shelf life for that in the canister would be like?
It's almost endless, really. I know there's bulls that have been around 20 or 30 years ago that are still being used. I'm sure with opening the canister and pulling straws out and that type of thing, you could maybe have deterioration, you know, simply occurring because of exposure. The important thing is you got to thaw this to a certain temperature at a certain speed. Light, you don't want sunshine, you know, shining on it. So you got to make sure you handle this, you know, properly. And there's a technique to that. And there's a gun that goes along with this. You would break the straw off here, you'd use a gun, and of course you would, you know, fertilize the female with this. And that's of course what happens with the heat watch program or even visual appraisal to know exactly when the ideal time is to fertilize that egg. You know, you just can't do it anytime. You know, you got to do it at the proper time.
Yes, yes. Well, is there anything else that we need to discuss at this visit?
Well, I think the important thing here is beef cattle industry in Illinois and throughout the United States have changed dramatically. You know, we talked about many of those things that's happened 20 or 30 or 40 years ago as compared to what they are today. And when it used to be the eye of the master and just kind of going to the show and picking out what they thought was the top genetics, that's really history anymore. Beef cattle industry, all the way from selection to nutrition to management to health to housing, is a very scientific business. It's a business that takes a lot of capital. When you think of the pasture and what the cost is per pasture, when you think about the harvesting of the winter feed supply, and again, the thing of it is you most of the time just get one calf, you know, out of that cow each year. So you got to make sure that you make the proper decisions so that calf really has some genetic merit to it. And I think the other thing is all of agriculture, and beef cattle producers especially, do things in what I'd call a very environmental friendly way in which they handle their animals in a very good welfare as far as how they treat their animals, as how they protect their animals. They're out day and night. You know, if they think that cow is going to calve, hey, they'll go out there to check that cow herd that's calving maybe 2 or 3 times, you know, each night. So they know that they take care of that animal nutritionally, health, environment, everything, because by taking good care of that animal, you tend to get a response back in performance, whether that's conception rate, whether it's weaning weight, whether it's the end product when you go to the retail shelf.
Well, Dave, on behalf of the Abraham Lincoln Library and Museum, I want to thank you for taking your time and sharing your knowledge with us with the cattle industry in Illinois and the historical account and where we've come from the time we have had oxen and so on and so forth. So I think you've given us a nice journey here today. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. It's been exciting being working with the industry for the past 40 plus years.
I'm sure.